Nevada is one of only 3 states with no form of tax on business income or revenue. That would change under a so-called margins tax initiative filed by the Nevada State Education Association. The initiative proposes to establish a 2% tax on business revenue above $1 million after offsetting costs of goods sold or payroll. The tax would raise an estimated $800 million a year, which would be earmarked to pay for K-12 education. If supporters gather 72,000 signatures on the petition by November, the legislature can then approve the measure or something like it. Or if they don't, the initiative will come back to the voters for approval in 2014. Our guest today has been battling to broaden Nevada's tax base by establishing some form of tax on business for at least the last 15 years, which is to say as long as I've been around in this state. We're joined by Bob Fulkerson, the Executive Director of the Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada. Welcome, Bob. Good to see you.
So it just drives you progressives crazy, doesn't it, that there's no substantial business tax in this state? I do want to add that Lynn Warney actually corrected the record last week in a Nevada News Bureau story. She said that the money would actually flow into the state general fund, but that it could then, and she expected that it would be then flagged for education. Is it really a good idea, though, to raise any kind of taxes, whether on private citizens or business, right now when the economy is just now starting to turn the corner?
Well, you know, first, it doesn't drive progressive crazy that there's not this broad-based business tax, but it is causing a world of hurt for kids and for parents and for anybody that's dependent on our dysfunctional tax system to provide any modicum of social services or education. And, you know, we heard the same thing during the boom years. Now's no time to raise taxes on businesses. And even in this, in the economic times that we're in right now, we are still one of the top wealthiest states in the country. There is a lot of wealth in this state that needs to be captured. It's being exported out of state. And we need to capture that wealth and build schools and build public infrastructure for the people who live here.
If there is wealth to be gone after by any kind of new tax, does it really rest with businesses? You know, why not try to push for higher personal taxes or you know, possibly a personal income tax in this state, something that Hugh's talked about many times, as opposed to going at it this way? Because you know the business lobbyists are going to be up in Carson City pushing back on this any way they can, either trying to kill it or trying to get exemptions and exceptions, as happened with the margins tax down in Texas.
Yeah, it's damn near impossible to get an income tax in Nevada because it would require 2 votes of the people to change the Constitution. So it's not going to happen for a long, long time. Down the road, I mean, that is something that we definitely have to look at and would have to do. But the fact of the matter is 47 other states have some sort of corporate profits tax. 1960 was the first year that the Legislative Council Bureau came out and recommended to the legislature we have a corporate profits tax. And since then, there's been study after study after study, millions of dollars spent on those studies that go to the legislature that say we have to broaden our tax base. We need a corporate profits tax. The legislature has been incapable of responding, in large part because of the 2/3 majority that Governor Gibbons gave to us. So now it's up to the people.
I should mention, in the interest of full disclosure, that in a former life I was actually a consultant for Bob's organization, paid cash money occasionally, not very much, but a little bit, so I'll get that out of the way. But matter of fact, working on this issue, among others, among taxes. You know, Bob, as you know, the tax rate on those 47 other states on business profits is a lot higher than 2%. Typically.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, the Texas margins tax is 1%, but most states have corporate taxes, corporate income taxes that raise in 5, 6, 7, even 8% rate.
Oh, yeah.
Why so low?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and you know, California right next door, their corporate profits tax is 8.84%. Every state that borders Nevada is higher than 2%. You know, one of the reasons is because we want to make this palatable to Nevada businesses. And the other thing is that we want to make sure that this thing passes.
All right.
Well, I don't think it's going to be palatable to Republicans no matter what. I've got a question for you right when we come back from the break. We'll be back with more on this margins tax, plus a look ahead at a couple of interesting races in the primary election tomorrow coming up right after this. Welcome back to The Agenda. We're here with one of Nevada's most vocal progressive activists and executive director of the Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada, talking about the left's favorite causes in the Silver State.
Bob, this Harvey Whittemore thing that has been in the news, I don't want to go on and on about that, but it reflects the influence that lobbyists traditionally have had in Carson City. Everybody goes up there, gets in a bubble, legislators basically do what these people say because these lobbyists pretend to be their friends and legislators believe them, and nothing ever happens. And I'm concerned that maybe something like this, even let's say it gets passed, and then the lobbyists go in and start chipping away and grabbing exemptions and building it up to the point like they have done with the mining industry and exemptions, to where they're not paying effectively any taxes at all sometimes on mines. I see the same kind of thing perhaps happening here, and I guess my question is, why this profits margin? Why not just go for gross receipts?
Well, first, I think it's the irony has to be noted that it takes 2/3 requirement to pass a tax, but it takes just a simple majority to give a sweetheart tax loophole to these corporations. And I think that's one thing. I think there should be a 2/3 tax, 2/3 requirement for these tax loopholes and special deals to these corporate lobbyists.
Legislators will vote for that.
Very interesting proposition, though.
And then, you know, the gross receipts makes a lot of sense too. It really does. And unfortunately, you know, our good Governor Gwynn tried to get that through, gave it a really good shot. A lot of people helped, but the same people who were whining and moaning about this one, who were making enormous profits off of our state and shipping them out of state, shot that down. What they did like, though, was the modified business tax that really hurts small businesses that they purport to be protecting all the time.
A quick note on that, actually, and then we'll change the topic and talk about a couple of primary races. As Hugh and I were reading through this legislation this morning, 32 pages of it, we were interested to note that the modified business tax, that the way it seemed to play into this bill right now is that businesses who would be subject to the margins tax will get a credit for any modified business tax paid. Presumably, though, businesses that don't qualify for the margins tax don't.
Yes, and what this effectively means is that businesses that have $1 million or less in revenue, who have less than $1 million in revenue, are actually going to continue to be stuck paying the modified business tax. Apparently, single subject rule was the reason they did this. They didn't want to run afoul of the state Supreme Court, and so they had to leave it in here. It's an argument that I'm sure people will be using against this.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's going to matter. I spoke to Senator Roberson this morning. Of course, the Republicans poised, if all goes according to their plan, to take over the state Senate. They have said they are going to oppose this tax any which way you pitch it, any which way you slice it, any which way you amend it. Doesn't matter, even if it's revenue neutral. This is not something, in Senator Roberson's opinion, that any Republican in Carson City is going to support. So,
well, I'm sure that's music to the ears of Grover Norquist, but to the rest of Nevada, it makes them totally irrelevant to the process because this thing's going forward.
Well, that's right. I mean, you know, another scenario is that it goes to the legislature and somehow there is some kind of deal that is struck because they don't want to see this actually go to the voters, and so they come back to the teachers and AFL-CIO and say, hey, we'll give you this if you pull this back. They figure that out, and then we end up getting something that is much, much less than what we would get. So I actually welcome Roberson's let's dig in our heels and not do anything, because then it won't get into that kind of sleazy deal in the legislature, and it will come back to voters, and as you suggested earlier, that's the only way anything gets done, is going to get done.
I think that's what the teachers union had in mind when they decided to back this. They don't believe in their own Democratic lawmakers to get things done for them, so they're taking matters into their own hands. Any last words on this initiative? What is your organization going to be doing, sir, to push this forward?
We'll be helping with the volunteer effort to gather signatures. We'll be talking to our member groups. We'll be stumping for this every way we can.
Okay, great. We will. Let's wrap this for now, and then we'll come back in the. You want to stay with us for another segment and talk about an interesting state senate primary?
Yeah,
that's,
for just a
on the ballot.
All right, let's do that. Let's do that. Let's throw out the script. We'll be back right after this. All right, welcome back to the agenda. Our guest, Bob Fulkerson, brought in a mailer. Hold this up. Hopefully you can see that there. We've got Glenn Beck, Sharon Angle, and State Senator John Lee. 3 peas in a pod.
Oh,
that's some pretty gruesome stuff, I got to tell you. Although, you know, Lee's a Democrat, obviously. This is what hurts. He's in this Democratic primary against Pat Spearman, touted as the more progressive candidate. From a policy standpoint, I think that that's fairly factual characterization.
He's a Democrat. Look, he's a conservative Democrat. That in no way puts him
it points
in
out
the
here that
same
he has
playground as Glenn Beck and Sharon Angle.
Allow me to read from the mailer Bob Biden.
Oh, brother.
John Lee got contribution, $5,000 from the Keystone Corporation. That's that right-wing group that is featuring extremist Glenn Beck at their annual dinner. It sounds like a pretty solid connection to me. Look, I know you guys, not the nonprofit arm of PLAN, but your political arm has been keenly interested in the Lee-Spearman race. Just what's your take on that? Why do you think that Lee should be defeated?
Well, it's not just us. It is environmental and conservation organizations, it's women's organizations, it's labor organizations, it's the broad spectrum of the base that has values that want to make our communities better.
But did any of those organizations pony up and give Spearman the money she would need to defeat John Lee? Because a lot of times, unfortunately, with mail, as an example, it takes money to get that stuff in front of voters.
Yeah, they did. I mean, contribution expense accounts were just
which had like 90,000 or something.
So it was about 90,000. Of course, Lee raised, you know, from like NV Energy, who doubled down on him, who, you know, asked last year for a 24% rate increase, so they're doubling down on John Lee.
Right, because environmental groups don't have as much money as corporations. That's how that was. I'm sorry, you know what, the clock is a cruel mistress here.
Well, the Angle thing is at SB 271. That was close to the bill that she introduced to pull us out of the
I'm
TRPA.
sorry, Bob, we are genuinely out of time,
Right.
but thanks so much for coming in today. I really enjoyed it. Tomorrow is primary day, and the Las Vegas Sun's political editor, Anjanette Damon, will join us to help us break down all the excitement and anticipation, or at least shed some light on what it might mean.
Thanks for watching us. I'm Elizabeth Crum.
And I'm Hugh Jackson. Have a great day.